We're live. Hi Nick, how you
Yay.
doing?
I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, good. I've had a busy day of calls, so it's actually nice to do this and do something a bit different.
Yeah.
So we did a LinkedIn live. Gosh, was it a couple of weeks ago now? I can't even remember what date it
I
was.
think it was 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
And we thought, oh, some people actually started watching, so we'll do another one and see how it goes. So we thought, what should we cover? So we've put in a Q&A session, and if you are watching, then me and Nick are putting ourselves out there. Like, ask us anything you like. We will do our best to answer your questions for you. So, if you do have
Absolutely.
questions, put them into the comment boxes, and also let us know where you're kind of watching from as well. Are you UK? Where in the UK are you? Um, so we also have some questions kind of prepared in case nobody kind of shows up to this. We'll go through a couple of
Prepared,
things that we're going
prepared's a relative term, though, right?
prepared. We have a list of questions that we have not prepared answers to. Um, but before we get into them, Nick, shameless plug. What's happening on the 5th of February?
Yeah. So we're running an ERA webinar. So the Employment Rights Act is top of a lot of HR people's agenda right now, and we have, I think, close to 900 people signed up to join us for a webinar on Thursday morning. If you go to my
Wow.
LinkedIn profile, you'll be able to see details of that. I've been plugging it pretty shamelessly for a number of weeks. But yeah, it seems that a lot of people are interested, understandably, in the changes that are coming and kind of the practical implications of that. So if you're not already signed up, I know a lot of people will be, but if you're not, then check out the invite in my posts, and it'll be great to see you there.
And I think with the Employment Rights Act, it's just about attending these regular sessions, just kind of keeping on top of it as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's kind of a staged implementation over 26 and 27. So it's not necessarily panic stations, but certainly for April 26th, there are some things coming that it's worth being ahead of. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. You've got a big event coming next month, Claire. If we're doing plugs to get us started before we get any questions.
Yeah, 19th of March, the Elevate event. We have some amazing speakers. Obviously, Nick, you're going to be on stage in your element. We have Molly Johnson-Jones, Amanda Chadwick, John Hibbs, Ray Law. So lots of amazing speakers. Gorgeous venue in London as well. So we have about 35 tickets left, and we're a
Mm.
couple of months out. So yeah, go and grab your ticket. I've just seen that people are actually joining us, Nick, and they're telling us where they're from.
Yay.
I saw rainy Hampshire. I'm in Worthing on the South Coast. It's also raining here. It is grim. So if you do have any questions for us, obviously we're in the world of HR, so try and keep it related to HR if possible. But feel free to put them in the comments. So I've got my list of questions. I'm just going to randomly pick one for you. Nick. And I think, yeah, it's always interesting to hear how people have started and kind of got into their professions. So did you kind of fall into employment law? You like, you had this like deep desire to be a lawyer when you were 10 years old?
Age 10, wanted to be an employment lawyer. No, I didn't. I spent a lot of time unsure as to what I wanted to do, and a bit like my eldest son, probably I should ease off on him a little bit. And I actually did a psychology degree to start with, so I guess the people thing was always a factor. I was interested in why people do what they do, and that kind of thing. They didn't train me how to analyze people, which is usually the joke that I get, from having studied psychology. But I then didn't enjoy that, mainly because I was doing too much statistics, so that put me off pretty early on. Maths was not really my thing, but I
Yeah.
managed to get through that, and then decided that I was going to change tack and narrowed it down to law and management consultancy. And I couldn't really work out what management consultants did. So no offense to the management consultants that might be watching. I suspect we don't have any of those. And decided to go with law, and joined a really large law firm where there was lots of opportunity to work with some great clients, and lots of different practice areas. And I suppose to a certain extent did fall into the employment law side. So we had a very strong employment team. There were about 40 employment lawyers in that team. So it was a really big and successful team, and absolutely loved it, and was given the opportunity to work with all sorts of fantastic clients, big corporates. And yeah, decided that was it. I just loved the people side, the HR side of things there, and was constantly surprised by what people got up to at work. So it was that human element a lot of the time, combined with the kind of the problem solving bit. So navigating through, tricky issues with clients to try and get them to where they wanted to be, with a knowledge of the law as we went, but actually quite a practical approach to, okay, well, what are we trying to achieve here? How are we going to resolve this situation? So that was the route. Never really had a burning desire to, but still love it.
Definitely a fascinating area to be involved with. We have a question from Gareth Edmonds. Do you anticipate a huge increase in trade union involvement in workplaces in the future, or do you think the Employment Rights Act will have limited impact?
Do you want to take that one, or do you want me to?
We can predict the future. I think there could be an increase. I don't think it's going to be a huge increase. I don't think there's going to be a stampede for people wanting to join unions, because actually, I think on the whole, the Employment Rights Act has been positioned as being, employee friendly, or of benefit to the employee. So no, personally, I don't think we will. I don't know if you're seeing something different in reality, Nick.
Yeah, I guess it's one that people are aware of, but maybe not majoring on. So I think it's a good question. I know Gareth well. Hi, Gareth. I think it's clearly designed for a certain purpose. There's a certain, political policy behind it. I suppose my thinking and my advice to some clients that aren't used to operating in a unionized workforce because they don't have any, or it's not a thing for them at the minute, is that you might want to consider what kind of employee voice you have within your organization already, so that people do feel heard and represented in some way. And that might not be a union. It might be a different forum. But I suspect if you were concerned that you wouldn't want a union operating in your workplace, because of some of the additional complicating factors that can present. I'm not bashing unions altogether in the sense that it can be a positive in a number of ways, but it might be that actually as an employer you want to think about, okay, well, how do we listen to our people? How do we engage with our people? How do they feel represented? And that might be helpful. But the changes are also staggered over a period of time. So I think the things around access and balloting and that kind of stuff will take a bit of time to filter through, but I suspect it will have some impact because it's designed to. But we will see. You're right, it's a bit crystal ball.
We don't know. Another question from Caroline. I'm starting out in independent HR consultancy. Well done, good for you, taking the leap. Specialising in ER. I'm acutely aware of the risk of becoming a respondent on an ET1 through hearing cases for my clients. Any tips on positioning my role as advisor/consultant and not decision maker?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one and a live issue. I suspect for HR consultants, it is a bit of a balancing act. I certainly know some that will not ever take on the role of decision maker in an internal process. So, generally, the way, for those that are not aware, they would be commissioned to hear the appeal on a disciplinary or investigate and decide a grievance or those kind of things. And if you are the decision maker on behalf of the employer, then in theory, one, you could be a witness at the employment tribunal. And two, I suppose it's also possible that if there was any allegation of discrimination, you could be named as a respondent to the claim alongside the employer themselves. So there is some risk around that, and I guess insurance is a good starting point on that kind of thing. But it's a live issue, and it kind of, from my perspective, comes with the territory when you're taking on that kind of work. The alternative, of course, is just to provide procedural support or advisory support to people within the business that are making those decisions. And of course there are plenty of SMEs that don't have in-house HR or have very junior HR support, where actually an external consultant can add a huge amount of value. So it is a difficult one. I think the obvious answer is, if you don't want to be a witness or a respondent, don't be making decisions and just stick to the advisory side. But I think that there is a stream of work available to HR consultants to help with those kind of things. I've had a number of cases recently where the employer has run out of people essentially that can hear these kinds of issues, and therefore it's been necessary to get external support. So it's a difficult one. Do a good job would be my other suggestion. Again, quite an obvious point, but it minimizes the risk all around. I can see some questions too. Let's have a look.
There's a long question here. Right, let's try and tackle this one. Horrid case, short version. Individual worked for ER for over 2 years, but also a US national. ER is a supplier of pet products. Okay, so this is the company. Individual off sick with work-related stress and has submitted 12-page grievance. This is written by AI. Won't attend a meeting, even a virtual one, to discuss the grievance. So investigating based on what I know. Also won't attend welfare meeting, as doesn't feel well enough. Sick notes are provided, but I believe individual has gone home to America and is claiming SSP. I don't know if there's anything more than that. It says they email me at 2:30. I can't see anything beyond that.
Yeah, it cuts off for me at that point as well. So should we maybe let Andrew add another comment with the actual question if that's helpful?
I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah.
Sounds messy. I raised the point about kind of the AI, so let's just tap into that. I think I'm certainly hearing that HR people are finding themselves being, reading through grievances submitted by AI. And I think we were having a conversation a few weeks ago around whether we could actually stop the use of AI for grievances. I mean, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really live issue for a lot of HR teams, for a lot of clients. And if I'm really honest, I'm still developing my thinking on it to a certain extent. One thought that I've had is that it's often very obvious when an employee lands an AI generated 20-page grievance, and it doesn't sound like them. It's not the way that they would communicate in normal circumstances, and it is generating a huge amount of work for HR teams to read all of that stuff, to investigate it, and so on. But of course, there's a legal obligation on employers to do so when grievances are raised. My current thinking is that we might start to get to a position where we just call it out with employees as part of that in a nice way, and effectively say, we think that you've probably had some AI assistance with this grievance, and that's fine. But actually what we want to do is understand your concern directly from you. And we'd like to have the meeting as we would be, doing so anyway. And yes, it's really useful that we have this document that you've produced, which is a guide to that. But what we're going to want you to do is to explain what the issues are in your words so that we can properly understand them, in the hope that at the very least narrows down the issues to a certain extent and gets to the core of what's really going on. And not to say that we're ignoring that written document altogether, but just hopefully, as I say, narrowing stuff down that makes it a bit more manageable, that allows the grievance investigator, the decision maker, to actually focus in on the key issues and save some time. I think there probably are a few tribunal decisions out there. I suspect probably just at the first stage tribunals as opposed to appeals, but it's on my to-do list to look into in more detail, where the tribunals have started to grapple with this as well, both in terms of grievances that have been raised, but also claims now that are being drafted by AI too. And I think we're certainly seeing on the face of it claims that look very well written, very well put together, and a bit more legal, in inverted commas, where historically employees might have struggled to do that. And on the one hand, you might think, well, that's really positive for employees, better access to justice, that kind of thing. But actually, if it's artificially making claims look like they're better than they are, that is a challenge for the tribunal and for employers. So it's an evolving area for sure, and I think we might well end up with some other tactics for dealing with this, but it's tricky.
Definitely watch this space, I think, through the tribunals and see what their response to it is. So we have the final part of Andrew's question.
Andrew's mega question.
I'm not actually going to read that. I think I can summarize it quite simply, and I don't mean to downplay the issue. When you have an absence case, so someone is off with work-related stress that is refusing to engage in the process, kind of what can you do? It's almost kind of catch-22. You want to resolve the work-related stress, but in order to do that, you have to speak to them about the issue that's causing the work-related stress. But if they're refusing to engage in the process, kind of where are you left? Like, what can you do? What can you do? Andrew has said that he's investigating based on what he knows and the information that he has in front of him. But there are other things that he could be doing.
Yeah, I suppose it happens. It is unusual for employees to raise grievances and then decide that they don't want to actually pursue them or talk to you, but it does happen, and obviously this is a good example of that. I think sometimes you are just stuck with going on the basis of what you have in a written document, and I think if you can demonstrate that over a period of time you've sought to engage with the individual and you have an audit trail to show that, then I think it is helpful then just to move forward on the basis of what you have in the original grievance. Usually these situations are complicated by factors like Andrew I think is noted in terms of sickness absence, other issues like a performance issue or disciplinary or those kind of things. So they do tend to get complicated, and often what I find is that we end up with the employer running a series of different streams, as it were, different processes all at once, as I would describe them, where you might be managing absence at the same time as investigating a grievance or a disciplinary and so on. And it's almost like the other slightly clumsy analogy I use is like a horse race, so which horse finishes first will depend on what outcome you get and what you do next. So it is difficult, but on the lack of engagement piece, I think the key really is an audit trail to show that you've tried, and then starting to ratchet up pressure in some way, be that we're going to hear the grievance without you if you can't explain to us why you won't engage, or absence management processes or whatever it is. But it's always very fact specific, and I think which of those kind of streams you choose to pursue first will depend on the case itself. So it's one of those ones where I would say, you can take some of that guidance, but it really depends on the exact circumstances of the case. And I'd have a lot more questions like, do we have occupational health advice? Have we tried to get that? And so on.
And I think the thing for me, the importance of just keeping momentum, just keep going with the process. It's incredibly frustrating, but just keep going. If they ignore your letters, send another one, say what date you'd like to be contacted by, and just keep momentum with it. But good luck with that, Andrew.
Claire, I've got one for you from Gurpreet. How important is it to manage ER issues through informal discussions or mediation routes, especially when they aren't that serious? Not a lot of businesses invest in mediation, and in-house or outsourced HR professionals end up picking up that. What do you think?
I agree with that. That actually, do you know what? I saw the question kind of as it came up. Over the years, I can count on one hand how many times we brought formal mediators in to resolve issues. I think the question around how important is it? We want to keep employees, I think happy is the right word, satisfied within the workplace. So anything that you can do to resolve issues, however small, however big you think they are, we have to resolve them. So I'm actually a fan of mediation and, trying to resolve issues informally as much as possible. So I think it depends where you work in terms of the level of importance.
Do you think most HR people are equipped to kind of do the mediation bit as the mediator?
Formally, I probably not. I think obviously there are lots of great courses out there. I think Pete Colby, this is his area, kind of training people in mediation. And I think it comes down to experience as well. So if you are experienced and you've done the course, then yes, but I don't think I would expect the majority of HR people to be formally stepping in as mediators.
Yeah. While you were talking, I've had another look at the questions. Ben Horner, hi Ben. Ben and I had lunch recently, so there you go. Good to see you on here. I obviously sold the LinkedIn Live well. He says, how would you approach contract changes and restructuring in light of the inability to fire and rehire in the ERA? And I'm absolutely going to snatch this question because I'm banging on about this as much as I can, because I think people are missing this and have been for quite some time. So whenever we talk to employers about this, they say, one, what's fire and rehire? Or two, I know what fire and rehire is, but we don't do that. And that might well be the case, but actually what it's designed to do is to prevent employers making changes to terms and conditions in the way that they have some flexibility to do now. And again, it's easy to do that if employees agree to the changes. And a lot of the time that is the case because the employer sells it well, or it's to the employee's benefit, or whatever it might be. But there are still circumstances where employers are having to force that change through for good business reasons, and they follow a proper process as the law sort of sets out at the minute. And what these changes to fire and rehire mean is that essentially that won't be possible in relation to a whole load of key terms. So to answer Ben's question, my suggestion at the minute is, if you are looking at terms that you think, I'm not sure we'll be able to maintain these over an extended period of time, that you need to start consulting on that change now or soon in order to get ahead of these changes, which I think off the top of my head are 26, so October 26. And therefore actually getting started on that and at least doing an analysis of, are there these things that we might want to change for whatever reasons that are coming down the tracks? Because it will be very difficult to agree those changes when people know, well, actually the employer doesn't have the ability to force this change should we, say no. So I think it's a really, really good question and a really important thing for employers to be on top of.
So it's almost worth doing an audit, regardless of whether you're thinking about those changes and what could come. I mean, none of us can predict the future, but it's almost having a look, say, actually, are they sustainable? Are those terms and conditions something that we can commit to in future years? Yeah.
The other thing that some people are considering are building in sort of flexibility clauses into employment contracts. And again, there's some debate as to whether they would work anyway, but some people are taking the view that if we have a contractual right to flex terms, then we might be in a better position when this change comes in and we can't use fire and rehire. We can say, oh, well, we have a contractual right to make these changes. And we're talking pretty fundamental changes like hours and pay, working patterns, that kind of thing. So it's not just little fringe benefits and whatever else. Some of this is pretty fundamental stuff. So yeah, that's the other thing that people are looking at. But again, it's with a kind of slightly dubious view on whether they will actually be, they'll work essentially, whether it'll be possible to use them, and that that will be enough. But it might be worth thinking about.
And I think you've said before that there, and I haven't read this, so this is literally me quoting you, Nic, that there is going to be a kind of get out clause. They can do the fire and rehire if there is an economical reason. I can't remember how you position it, right?
Yeah, so it basically is you can do it if your business is on the brink of going under, essentially. I'm not sure that's the exact phrase they use, but essentially, if you're in such financial difficulties that you're on the edge of disaster, then you would be able to. But so there is that caveat. But my view on that is that most business owners won't want to take their business to the brink, and therefore they're unlikely to think, oh, okay, well, we're going to wait and see. Oh, now we're going to change, terms and conditions. I think it's much more realistic to think that if an employer needs to change things in order to save money, they're going to make people redundant. So I think it's another of those unintended consequences with the ERA, which is it will result in fire but no rehire.
Yeah.
Because actually, generally speaking, it's about, well, some of the time it's about cost saving. Sometimes actually it's more about productivity and efficiency and changing shift patterns to improve things in a factory where actually we were moving from 2 shifts to 3 shifts, or that kind of thing. But very often, particularly when it's disaster scenario, it's about saving money, and therefore I think it's going to result in redundancies as opposed to changes to T's and C's.
Yeah.
Should we talk about something other than the ERA?
Yes, I have. As I said at the beginning, if anyone's watching from the beginning, we have a list of questions prepared in case we didn't get loads flooding in. I think this is a helpful question to for us to give people tips. So, is there anything that HR teams or organisations can do to kind of prevent a lot of these people issues, that whether they end up in disciplinary or tribunal? What can they be doing to stop it happening?
I guess there's probably 2 things that come to mind for me, and they're not particularly innovative, but they're kind of age-old truths. So managers are the front line of so much of this stuff, and actually if they're not trained well, if they don't know what they're doing when it comes to managing issues, then you're kind of destined for disaster. So it may be, that's FaceTime with HR doing training. It might be external trainers like Jess that we know very well in the Elevate Hub. It might be employment law training, that I would do. But I think upskilling those kind of frontline managers is more important than ever, in my view. The other one is actually just communication and audit trail. I guess that's maybe 2 things. But actually, communicating with people well as to why things are happening, I still think is often missed. And I see so many cases where, had communication been better and had it been explained to an individual why the thing was happening, be it why a performance wasn't good enough, or why a restructure was taking place and what the business case was for that, I think a lot of issues could be avoided that way. How about you?
Well, I think just kind of building on from the communication piece, that having regular one-to-ones and not cancelling them, actually just keep checking in with your people all the time, because you might start to hear that things are bubbling, there's undercurrents, there's dissatisfaction about things. I think having that regular communication could easily resolve a lot of issues. Kind of going back to the point, like the informal issues that we see, I think you could kind of nip them in the bud quite quickly if you're having those regular conversations.
Yeah. I've got another one for you, and then maybe we'll pick up Rob's question. So on a kind of, I guess it builds on the previous question and a slightly more positive note. What's something that HR professionals are doing that often doesn't get noticed?
The first word that came into my head was everything. I think that HR people are generally undervalued. And I think to just kind of explain that point, HR people tend to be very good at completing the work, doing the job, and then they're right onto the next thing. And we're not so good at celebrating success and shouting about it, and really pausing to recognise and reflect what we've delivered. So yeah, lots of things that HR people do kind of just fly under the radar. And something else that I say about the HR team is that it's almost like you don't want people to notice most of the work you're doing, because typically it means there's a problem. If the systems are running smoothly, the processes are running smoothly, people are being paid on time, no one kind of cares about it. They're just like, it's just happening. So typically people will notice when there's an issue. So lots of stuff we don't want people to see. So on that point, if you work in HR, like, celebrate your successes. It's a tough gig at the moment. I know from speaking to people in the Elevate Hub, they are incredibly busy. So take the time to pause, reflect, and think, do you know what? We did good. We did good this week.
Yeah. And I guess along those lines, I was really struck by a post I saw on LinkedIn from our friend Dr. Jo Burrell yesterday, where she was tracking a kind of case study of a person, you know, an HR professional, and through their career, the kinds of things that they'd had to deal with. And it was actually very, well, I guess almost moving in terms of the seriousness of the issues that HR people are dealing with, and the kind of lack of recognition, you know, for the fact that they have to do some of that stuff. So yeah, if you don't follow Dr. Jo Burrell, yeah, get onto her profile on LinkedIn. And we should also say, Claire, we haven't done this, but if people don't follow us on LinkedIn, we're both very active. We are doing this on LinkedIn because of that. Do give us a connection request or a follow. Likewise, I think you can probably connect with each other if you're on the live, but do feel free to pop your profile details in the chat for people to make it easy if you're looking to build your network too.
Yeah. So we were doing this for half an hour. There are 2 questions. I personally am not going to talk about the Epstein case files because, frankly, I don't know enough about it. I've actively avoided it. But Nick, if you want to pick that up in the comments afterwards, feel free.
Yeah.
Nikki, your question as well. So we will come back to you in the chat. I think Brian's
and we are doing another one of these. We should plug that because maybe we can pick those up in future.
We are doing we actually have a half term in February, which has kind of knocked us a little bit. So our next one will be the 24th of February. We do post the events on our profiles, so you have the opportunity to register, click accept, whatever it is, so you can come along to the next one. And as always, if there are feedback, there's feedback in any of the sessions. If you have questions that you'd like us to answer, then please send them in advance. We're happy to pick them up. I think we're done. Amazing. Nick, thank you so much. Super insightful as always. And we'll see you on the 24th.
Likewise. See you then. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.